Well, what is enough? Do you need more than that? Or is enough a state of abundance? Well, they had time to figure that one out because they ate this manna as they crossed the desert toward the promised land for 40 years. And it sustained them. But remember what I said about the years in the Bible, because they also say that Moses lived to 120. And that his brother Aaron, that he lived to something like 123. So was it 40 years? Who knows? But eating the same thing every day, still, they had learned their lesson. They had enough, and as God had promised, it came to them every single day. Now, one side note. There are a lot of people today who want to figure out what manna is, and I did my research. And the consensus seems either the cocoon from a beetle, yum, or it was a combination of fungi and algae. Think about it. It's like mushrooms and seaweed had a baby, and it was lichen. And that's what manna was. Sounds good, huh? 40 years of that, and no complaining. And that's the end of the story. And we will now sing our children to class.
Seven.
Oh. Wait.
Before we sing the children to class, I'd like to introduce our new children's music coordinator, Karina Daza.
She's going to go over with us.
Yeah, she'll be working with children's choir today in between the services. So if your children would like to participate, pick them up and bring them over to Classroom A. And she'll also be working with our kids during RE on other Sundays. Children's choir is grades 3 through 8. Now we'll sing our children to their RE class with the blessing song on the inside back cover of the gray hymnal.
Good morning. Can you hear me now? Is it better? Well, my name is Richard Bird. I'm a member of this congregation, and I'm also the chair of the Committee for the Larger Faith. And it's my pleasure to welcome you here this morning and those joining us online to worship. In order to reach a wider community than those able to be physically present on Sunday morning, our services are live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. Joys and Concerns are not live streamed or recorded. Before I continue, let me remind you to turn off your cell phones. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We deepen our relationships as we create a compassionate, welcoming community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. We ask that you wear the paper name tags because it helps us to get to recognize you as someone we'd like to meet. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope you may find it here. Whether you are new to Unitarian Universalism or visiting from another UU congregation, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after the service to have any questions answered. People become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting the church with their time and finances. If you are considering joining the church, please talk to our assistant minister, Denise Gouch. And following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy coffee and fellowship in the social area, where you will also find information about current opportunities and engagement and reflection. And there are a number of announcements in your weekly bulletin, which I hope you'll take home and read, and I have one other one. The remaining auction items will be on sale between services for 3 weeks starting today, November 11th. So you have a chance to purchase a painting, children's theater tickets, a dinner, picnic, or one of any other items. Thank you.
I invite you now to settle into your seats, to bring yourself fully present to this moment, to this gathered community. Take a few breaths. Think back over the days and hours that have led you here to this place with us. And as you do that, you may become aware of moments that have created great joy in your heart, moments of sorrow, events about which you are worried. All of these are holy and precious to all of us. If you would like to make a profound joy or sorrow present here in the sanctuary this morning, you're invited to come forward and place a stone in this bowl of water. Our lay minister, Jack Bleak, will help you do that. If you would like to have your joy or sorrow spoken, you can find yellow slips of paper in the pew in front of you. If you write legibly what your worry or concern or joy is, Jack and I will read those to the congregation. Holding these joys, these sorrows, worries in our heart, as well as those that lie unspoken on our hearts, let us join in the spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, we are so grateful to be alive this morning. Help us to remember that gratitude, even as the sorrows, the concerns, the worries about people impacted by forces beyond our control, the worries about people impacted by decisions made and words spoken by other people, as all of these affect us and cause us to realize that we are ever more connected to each other. Help us to hold all these things, knowing that the love that surrounds us, the web of all existence that binds us, is big enough to hold all of this. Help us to move more gracefully, more gratefully among all of these things that are part of our existence. Help us to look for the openings to speak kindness, to express thankfulness, to share love. May it be so. Amen. At this time in our service, we take up an offering to support the work of this church. We also share a portion of our offering every week with an organization that works to further our values and mission in the broader community. This month, we're sharing the plate with the prison ministry of this congregation. You can read a little bit more about their work in the order of service. You also have options for giving. Of course, the ushers will in a minute bring the bowls around, but you can also give by way of your mobile device. There are a few instructions inside the order of service if you wish. If you're at home, you can always find instructions for giving on our webpage, thefun, THEFUUN.org. As always, your generosity, like your presence here, is received with gratitude.
Our reading this morning comes from blogger Tracy Jackson. She calls it Gratitude, Don't Forget the Little Things. When it comes to gratitude, the big things can come more easily, like Mammogram Day. Women know the gratitude when they get that everything is okay message. It's easy to be grateful when things are going our way. I was thinking how we roll along being grateful while life is moving in the way we want, and then we get all worked up when the universe throws us something we were not prepared for. But then I started realizing that many of us really expect the world to go our way. It's why we get bent out of shape when it doesn't. We expect a lot of life here in the first world. We expect to always have water, heat, and electricity. Have you ever gone without electricity for a few hours or even days? You don't realize how grateful you are for electricity until you have lived without it. You are grateful for the first few hours it's back. But electricity is something we should be grateful for daily, instead of just turning on those switches and lights and computers and always expecting it to be there waiting for us. Why does gratitude for the mundane not kick in until the mundane lets us down? Last week I did an experiment. It was my daily commonplace things gratitude experiment. And you know what? It worked. Because there is something about being grateful that puts a smile on your face, even if it's as simple as being grateful for the water coming out of the tap. Now, how many times a day are we grateful for water? When we turn on the shower, do we say thank you? When our toilets work, do we expect it? Indeed. But whoever promised us water 24/7 from birth to death? So I started being grateful for water. When I turned on the tap, I said a quiet thank you. When I took a nice hot bath at the end of the day, I was grateful and I silently acknowledged that. I enjoyed my bath that much more, too. And then I kept it up, mundane thing after mundane thing. Traffic. Oh, thank you for giving me somewhere to go. Thank you for the fact that I have gas in the tank. Thank you for keeping me safe when I arrived. It's amazing how many thank yous you can ratchet up when you start in with the things we take for granted. Keys that work. Now this may sound like an odd one, but we always expect our keys to open all doors. That's not a bad metaphor on its own. But when you are in hotels, you have those little cards that tend to lose their powers when they bump up against a cell phone, which they always do. And so I normally find myself getting worked up in the elevator, wondering if my key will work or I will have to trudge back down to the lobby to get a new one. I start imagining failure before it occurs, and that leaves zero margin for gratitude. So every time the key worked, I would say, thank you. Thank you for making my life easier. And then on the few occasions it didn't work and I had to schlep to the lobby at midnight for a new key, I was grateful the guy was there to make me a new one. I was grateful I got to go to sleep and grateful I didn't have a job that required me to work all night. See, grateful builds on grateful. And when we consider those little things and are constantly saying a quiet thank you, there is not a lot of room for discontent. And it makes way for more gratitude and happier days. And that is a lot to be grateful for.
I'd like to invite you to rise in body or in spirit as you're so moved and join me in Singing the Journey. Number 1010, We Give Thanks. Song number 1010 in Singing the Journey.
For this time we
invite you now into a time of quiet reflection. As you turn your thoughts inward, consider the everyday things for which you are grateful. Maybe it's the warm bath water there at the twist of the faucet, or the sidewalk that lets you take your morning stroll in safety, or the nourishing food available that you didn't have to plant or hunt, or the music of the rain outside while you're warm inside. Whatever those things are, think on them for a moment with gratitude. And now I invite you to think on the people who bring you so many everyday gifts. Perhaps it's the one who prepares your meals every day, or keeps the lawn mowed, or takes out the garbage. The checkout clerk at the store who always greets you with a smile. Maybe it's the friend who just listens when you need it most. Or that unnamed person riding the truck who empties your trash bins before you get up in the morning. Whoever those people are, think on them for a moment with gratitude.
I've often wondered why it is sometimes so difficult for us to say thank you. Maybe somebody gives you a compliment. That they did that, or that's just an old rag, or, when a simple thank you would have done. Or you open up a present, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that cost a lot of money. I'll never be able to repay that one. Simple thank you would have done. Or you opened it up and you had some expectations for something different. Oh, why did they give me that? What did they think of me? I thought they thought of me in a different way. Simple thank you would have done. So I've been thinking about this a lot, why it's easier for us sometimes to give than to receive from others. And what came to mind, of all things, was Oscar Wilde's quip, where he said, nowadays, everybody knows the price of everything and the value of nothing. And I began to wonder if this simple ritual, this simple everyday ritual of saying thank you and you're welcome, could help us better understand what we really value, help us discern that. In the reading that Gail Sphar read to us today, the writer mentions that we take so much for granted in the first world, in this world with so much infrastructure. And I found that true, and like many of you here, I became aware of what I took for granted the first time I got to spend some time in a developing, or really an undeveloped country, consciously so undeveloped. And at first, of course, I was like, oh, where's the plumbing? Where's the running water? I'm going to wash dishes down at a river. This is a lot of work. But quickly, I learned to have gratitude for something else, for the camaraderie of the relationships I was building with people as we went down to the river to get the water, of developing these mutual, respectful relationships with others, and quite honestly, being really aware of where my water and food came from, and feeling much more part of the interdependent web of existence. Those are things that I say I value all the time here in church. But there, I felt real gratitude for the opportunities to have that. Now, I don't want to romanticize living in a developing nation. I know most of the people I talked to wanted plumbing. Most of them did, not all of them. But the story that Marguerite told this morning from Exodus reminds us that you don't have to be in the richest country in the world to have expectations that are disappointed and not feel very grateful for them. The Israelites were slaves in the richest country of the world in their day. And they had no idea how to live in the desert. No idea at all. And Marguerite didn't really, really get across how I felt, how really angry and disappointed that the Israelites were when they got hungry. I mean, they just complained. They were angry. They were angry at their God. They were angry at Moses and Aaron and Miriam. They were angry at everybody. And it didn't happen instantly that they felt grateful for that manna. Yuck, right? Lichen Yuck, we're all going to be eaten lichen someday. But, yeah. So it took them the proverbial, mythical 40 years in the desert to learn to be grateful for what they did have, for freedom, for mutual relationships, responsible relationships, where they could care for themselves, for the blessings that they had to become a community of support and justice. Took them a long time to give thanks for those things. So I've been thinking that gratitude is, saying thank you is like a perfect prayer. Now, Starhawk, the great pagan, said that prayer is changing consciousness at will. And when we say thank you, I think it flips this switch in our brain. Now, our brain has evolved to survive, right? And so to survive, it's evolved for us to notice the one bad thing that's going to threaten us. Okay? So I'm not going to starve to death like the Israelites in the desert, but I have come to take for granted my dear husband cooks me dinner when I come home. And I come to take that for granted. And so when the occasional time comes when there's no dinner there because something happened, mostly he just loses touch with time because he's retired. You know, my first thing, the first thing is to go, where's my dinner? I need my dinner. Right? That's and our brains are evolved to be that way. We got to eat, we got to survive, right? But it also can make you aware of how grateful I am that he cooks dinner almost every night and at a time that actually is convenient for me. And so with that thank you, it switches my mind to see all the other things that when I'm in survival mode, I am not seeing. Let's face it, if a tiger is going to eat you, you don't notice the figs and the gorgeous flowers around you, right? So saying thank you switches you into, I'm really not going to starve to death because dinner's late, and noticing all the abundant glories of your life in that moment. In that moment. I noticed this for the very first time, really, how it could just change your whole point of view about the world. When I was in my 20s, and people have heard, some of you have heard me talk about my father before. My father was a tyrant and very controlling. And so I was in my 20s, and I hated him. I said nothing good about him. I was just really, really, really angry. I spent half of my childhood fighting against him to do what I wanted to do. It was probably obnoxious to him, but I was righteous, and I was right. So it wasn't working that I kept hating him so much, though. It kind of leaked out in inappropriate places. And I was talking about this with a friend, and she says, well, can you think of one good thing about your father? Just one. Because I don't think I'd ever thought about one good thing about my father. And I went, oh. What came to me was kind of a surprise. What came to me was, oh, well, when we would go on vacation, the only time I really ever saw my father, he was at work all the time, was when we went on vacation, and we always went to my grandparents' house, and it was in Vermont, it was beautiful mountains, and he would just stop every once in a while. He never talked much, so it was a big deal. He'd stop every once in a while, he'd go, look at that. And he'd point out some bit of beauty in the world. Now, he never said it was beautiful, but he just stopped and said, look at that. And that was one of the most important things I learned in my childhood. was to look at the beauty of the world. That actually spiritually nurtured me and led me to know that I thought visually, which led me to know who I was and how I thought. It was so important. Now, as soon as I switched, and it was huge for me to switch from, oh, this man, I don't have to hate him. I can love him. He gave me so much. And then I could see the other things he gave me, the things I took for granted, that he did support a large family faithfully, that he sent us all to college, that he was so dogged in making sure that we could get an education. I was grateful for all those things I took for granted. So today, I want us to think about what we're grateful for in the moment. And I'm going to bring up an example, because last week, people here, and I'm going to confess I was with you, were off the charts, stressed out, and anxious about the election, right? Am I right? Okay. I thought I wasn't. I am really good at pretending I'm not anxious. I totally compartmentalized it, and then I got shingles on the day of the election. So then I went, oh, I'm stressed. I'm getting better, so I'm fine. But I feel much better today for the first time. Anyway, so I said, expectations. I had learned, you can never expect anything in an election because you're going to lose anyway. But clearly, I wanted to win. So so what happened was we were at the worship committee meeting, and there's a couple people here who are younger than I am, and they were pretty excited, I think, about voting. And they were looking at their cell phone through the whole meeting, and I've learned that's okay. They're paying attention, not to worry. But I didn't really think about, they're looking at the election results, which they were. And at the end of the meeting, they have Gail, the Community Oversight Board, is winning. It's won. And I'm like, what are you talking? I mean, I didn't believe it. Because, my face they said, you should see your face, Gail. Because I really didn't believe it. And quite honestly, I have gone to bed in elections in the past thinking we'd won and woke up in the morning and found out we lost. So I did wait until the morning to get excited about it, until all the results were in. And thank you, young people, because you voted. So I realized it shifted my whole attitude about the election, because I was so grateful. And not only was I so grateful to everybody who made that a win, I also knew throughout all the campaigning that this was the thing that I was working for, right? The Community Oversight Board, so that we have accountability for our policing here. So through all the campaigning for that, the people in this community, in the African American community who have known the history of working for this Community Oversight Board, made it very clear that 50 years ago, 30 years ago, people have tried to get this happen in this town, and that they were standing on the shoulders of people who had persisted through loss after loss. And finally, after 50 years, there was a win. Okay. So this changed my whole perspective of gratitude. So that day, the next day, when we're looking at the win, I don't care who you are. You had wins and you had losses, no matter what you were supporting, because it was a very mixed result election. So I can safely say that. And yet, I thought, well, look at that. In 50 years, this thing I value might win, right? Because people work so hard for it. So I'm going to ask people to stand up for different things around the election. And we're going to do this little ritual where I'm going to say thank you. And anybody can join me in saying thank you. And I want then you to say, if you stood up for that thing, you're welcome. Okay? All right. So is there anybody here that worked to get out the vote in any way? Okay. Work to get out the vote in any way. All right, let's all say, thank you. Great. See, we can do a ritual. All right. Is there anybody here that did anything to help any candidates, any campaigning, phoning, door to door, anything? Stand up, please, if you did anything to help any candidates. And if you voted, if you also then worked for any, not just candidates, but things like the COB, stand up as well. Okay. So, thank you. Okay. Now, I want everybody here who voted for the very first time to stand. Is there anyone here who voted for the very first time? Okay. You all have voted before. Well, I'm going to thank those who voted for the very first time, and we've got to spread that to them. Now, anybody in this room who voted at this election, please stand. Yeah, I see some people who aren't old enough yet. So let's all thank each other. Thank you, and you are welcome. Okay, thank you. I learned that by being grateful, I am thankful for the generations of citizens that have worked towards the values that I hold, and I am thankful to everyone in this country today, including many of you here, most of you here, who have worked to make our values real in this community. Thank you. May it be so.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing song, number 21, For the Beauty of the Earth. Hymn number 21.
The words of the chalice extinguishing can be found at the bottom of your order of service. Please join me. We extinguish this flame, not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of
close with these words by William Stafford. Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found. Carry into evening all you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this. Keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now? Starting here, right in this room, when you turn around. So with great gratitude, this service is over. Let our service begin again.